Am I the only one that didn't know about Thug BEHRAM, one of history's most notorious serial killers? In the heart of India, a name whispered with dread. Thug BEHRAM. BEHRAM, they say, strangled over 900 victims. He was a devout man, a family man, but he was also a thug, a member of a secretive cult of assassins. BEHRAM's story is not for the faint of heart. It is a tale of religious fanaticism, cold-blooded murder, and the long arm of justice. Join me now as we journey back to 19th century India. We will delve into the dark world of Thug BEHRAM, the deadliest serial killer in history. If this topic intrigues you, make sure to like, subscribe, and check out other deep dives into the world of politics, controversies, and untold stories. Stay tuned for more. To understand Thug BEHRAM, we must first understand the thugs. They were a secret society who worshipped Kali, the Hindu goddess of death. The thugs believed she demanded blood. They saw themselves as her instruments. They roamed India's roads preying on travelers. The thugs were masters of deception. They would befriend their victims, gaining their trust. Then, when the time was right, they would strike. Their weapon? A simple cloth scarf called a rumal. BEHRAM was born into this world of shadows. His father was a thug. So was his grandfather. It was his destiny. As a young boy, he witnessed his first strangling. He saw the fear in the victim's eyes. He felt the power surge through him. He was initiated into the cult. He learned the sacred rituals. He mastered the art of the rumal. BEHRAM quickly rose through the ranks. He was strong, he was ruthless, he was a natural killer. The thugs had a specific method of killing. It was quick, it was silent, it was efficient. They would use the rumal to strangle their victims. One thug would distract the victim, another would come from behind, and then, the embrace of the rumal. The victims were buried in shallow graves, no trace left behind. The thugs believed that Kali drank the blood of their victims. They were simply helping her to quench her thirst. Section 5. A Reign of Terror. For almost 20 years, BEHRAM led a band of thugs. They terrorized central India. Their reputation preceded them. Travelers lived in fear of their name. BEHRAM was a charismatic leader. He inspired loyalty in his men. He was also a cold-blooded killer. He showed no mercy. He personally strangled hundreds of people, men, women, and children. All were sacrificed to Kali. BEHRAM saw himself as a holy man, carrying out the divine will. He felt no remorse, only pride. Section 6. Whispers in the Wind. By the early 19th century, the British East India Company controlled much of India. They had heard the whispers of the thugs, the stories of their brutality. But the thugs were masters of secrecy. They left no evidence behind. The British dismissed the stories as superstition, that is, until they met William Sleeman. Section 7. The Devil's Due. Captain William Sleeman was a British officer. He was tasked with eradicating thuggee. He was a brilliant investigator. He was also a man obsessed. He knew that the only way to defeat the thugs was to understand them. He infiltrated their ranks, he gained their trust, he learned their secrets. Sleeman discovered that the thugs were not just a band of robbers, they were a highly organized cult, and they were everywhere. Section 8. Sleeman, the Hunter. Sleeman began a campaign of relentless pursuit. He offered rewards for information, he turned thug against thug, he infiltrated their gangs. Sleeman was a master strategist. He used their own tactics against them. He was patient, he was persistent, he would not rest until thuggee was wiped out. Section 9. A Net of Justice. The net began to close around BEHRAM. His closest allies were captured. They turned informer to save themselves. They revealed his secrets, his hiding places. BEHRAM was finally captured in 1840. He was brought before Sleeman. The two men stared at each other, the hunter and the hunted. BEHRAM knew his time had come. Section 10. The Confession. BEHRAM confessed to everything. He showed no remorse. He boasted of his kills. He claimed to have strangled over 900 people. He even showed Sleeman how he used the rumal. BEHRAM was hanged in 1841. His death marked the beginning of the end for the thugs. Sleeman's campaign had been a success, but at a terrible cost. Section 11. Legacy of a Strangler. Thug BEHRAM remains a figure of fascination and horror. Was he a monster or a product of his time? The truth, as always, is more complex. BEHRAM was a serial killer, but he was also a devout man. He believed he was serving his goddess. It is a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lie at the heart of humanity. By the early 1800s, however, British colonial authorities began to take notice of the rising number of disappearances and murders along India's roads. The Thuggee cult, which had been operating for centuries, became a major target of British law enforcement. In 1830, the British appointed Captain William Sleeman to lead the charge against the Thuggees. Sleeman's systematic investigation uncovered the vast network of thugs, and he was determined to root them out. BEHRAM by this time had become a legend among his own kind, a figure of terror whose name struck fear into even his fellow thugs. But even legends fall. In 1840, after decades of terror, Thug BEHRAM was finally captured by Sleeman's forces. He was arrested and interrogated, revealing many details about the Thuggee operations. His capture marked the beginning of the end for the Thuggee cult, as the British soon dismantled much of their network. Once in custody, BEHRAM reportedly confessed to his involvement in 931 murders. Whether this number is exaggerated remains a topic of debate among historians. Some argue that BEHRAM's confessions were coerced, or that he took credit for killings committed by other members of his gang. However, the scale of his crimes, whether exaggerated or not, was undeniably horrifying. After a series of interrogations, BEHRAM was sentenced to death. In 1840, the man who had taken so many lives met his own end, executed by hanging under British colonial law. Thug BEHRAM's story has become a mix of fact and legend. While British colonial accounts and contemporary historians paint him as the deadliest serial killer in history, some modern scholars believe that aspects of his story were exaggerated by British officials to justify their crackdown on the Thuggee cult. Nonetheless, the fear that BEHRAM inspired was real. His name became synonymous with death, and his actions contributed to the mythos of the Thuggee, a dark chapter in India's history that continues to fascinate and horrify to this day. Was he truly the deadliest killer of all time, or was he simply a pawn in a much larger, more sinister organization? Either way, Thug BEHRAM remains a chilling figure whose legacy is steeped in blood and shadow.